What would you do if your own daughter saw you not as a mother, but as a convenient, unpaid service? It started with the soft kind of manipulation most people would miss. A breezy call on a Wednesday night, her voice dipped in honey. "Hey, Mom, you're not busy this weekend, are you? I have this thing. Just a little dinner." "Well, a charity event, actually." "I'd feel awful if I couldn't make it. Could you watch Mia just a few hours?" "A few hours?" You'd think that meant a movie and popcorn bedtime stories, maybe a sleepy child tucked under warm blankets before her mother returned. But when Saturday came and the sun had long collapsed into the dark, you realized a few hours was a lie told in a cheerful tone, the kind that makes you question if you're overreacting. By midnight, the child was curled on your sofa shoes, still on sticky from candy you never offered her, and your daughter was not answering her phone. That's when you feel it, that cold tap on the spine. You know it, don't you? The creeping suspicion that your kindness isn't kindness to them, it's currency. And the problem is, you've been giving it away for free. The front door finally opened at 1:37 a.m. She breezed in, laughing at something from her phone, her heels clicking on the hardwood. No apology, not even a thank you. She only bent down to lift her daughter, your granddaughter, without even meeting your eyes. "She was fine, right?" she asked, already halfway to the door. That wasn't a question. That was a dismissal. You told yourself to let it go. That's what mothers do, right? They forgive. They swallow the sting. They tell themselves she's tired, stressed, not thinking. But you also know this: when a person learns you'll tolerate something, they'll test how much more you'll take. The next weekend it happened again. This time she dropped Mia off at noon, claiming she had errands. 16 hours later you saw her tagged in pictures, online champagne glass in hand, grinning under chandeliers. That's when something shifted inside you. You weren't angry, not in the way she expected. Anger burns fast. This was slower, colder, a gathering of quiet calculations. Because here's what she'd forgotten. You may not raise your voice, but you've raised her. You know the pressure points, the gaps between her bravado, the little things she values more than anything, like that precious credit card she flaunts around, the one you co-signed years ago to help her build responsibility, the one you still had online access to. Most women would have cut her off, screamed, demanded respect, but not you. You chose the kind of lesson that doesn't need shouting, the kind they feel not here. You waited for the perfect opening, and it came sooner than expected. That third weekend, she didn't even bother with an excuse. Just showed up at your door with Mia in tow, tossing a casual, "You're the best mom," over her shoulder as she left. The car engine hadn't faded before you sat at your desk, logged in, and began the transfer. Not to yourself. No, that would be crude. You moved a chunk of her available credit into paying down your bills, grocery debt, utilities, that lingering dental fee. The balance dropped like a guillotine, slicing through her financial safety net. You're wondering now, was it revenge? Was it justice? Maybe both? Maybe it was the quiet mother deciding she would not be used anymore. And when she called frantic 2 days later, "Mom, my card's maxed out. I had a purchase declined in front of everyone. You only listened." Let her feel the panic she never imagined you capable of causing. You said almost distracted. That's strange. Maybe the bank's protecting you from overspending. Silence from her side, then a softer voice. You didn't answer. Not directly. I've been thinking, you murmured instead, about how trust is like a credit line. It's available until someone abuses it. The line stayed quiet for a long time. Long enough for you to hear her breathing change. Long enough for her to understand that this wasn't about money, it was about respect. You didn't hang up first. That's the thing about power reversals. The one who is feared never rushes. And that night, for the first time in weeks, you slept deeply. The days after that phone call unfolded like the slow turn of a knife. She didn't storm over. She didn't scream into the phone. No, your daughter went quiet, the kind of quiet that's not peace, but calculation. You could almost feel her pacing in her own head, trying to piece together whether you were bluffing or dangerous. And you know what? That was fine. Let her wonder. The moment someone doubts they've fully mapped you, they tread differently. But the thing about silence is that it makes space for patterns to reveal themselves. You noticed how she didn't come around unless she needed something. You thought about the birthdays where her gift to you was a quick lunch, squeezed between meetings. You remembered how every mom could always landed on your busiest or most inconvenient days, like she knew you'd never say no, and that was the point. You've been that kind of mother, haven't you, the quiet one? The one who smooths over rough edges, who says it's fine even when it's not, because keeping the peace feels safer than forcing the truth into the light. But here's the shadow side of that. People mistake your grace for weakness. They forget you have teeth. By the 5th day, she texted you. "Hey, Mom, can we talk in person?" No emojis, no softeners. The words felt clipped. You agreed, but on your terms. Dinner here, bring Mia. You made her favorite meal not as an olive branch, but as a stage set. Because you know the right lighting, the right smell of roasted garlic in the air, it lowers defenses. She arrived looking polished, but her eyes told the truth. There was a tightness there, the kind that comes from swallowing too much pride in too short a time. Dinner started civil. Polite chatter about work, Mia's school, the weather. You waited until the plates were half empty before you leaned back and asked, "So, about your card?" Her fork froze midair. I checked with the bank. They said it was a payment adjustment from a joint account holder. That's right, you said, softly pouring yourself more water. It's my name on that account, too. I decided to use the credit I've helped you build for something important. Important? She almost laughed. You humiliated me in front of my friends. You cut her off, but not with volume. You left your daughter with me 3 weekends in a row without asking. You lied about the time you'd be back. You made me feel like a placeholder, like a babysitter you didn't have to pay because my payment was what your company when it suited you. Her face flushed. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Your voice was calm, but every word landed heavy. Because from here it looks a lot like taking without giving. Like testing how far you can push until the person you're leaning on finally breaks. She stared at you, searching for the version of you she knew, the one who'd shrug, change the subject, smooth it all over. But that woman wasn't at the table tonight. You think this is about money, you said, leaning forward now. It's not. The money was just a reminder for both of us that I have choices. I can say yes or I can say no. And maybe I've been saying yes for so long you forgot that no exists. Her shoulders slumped, but not in defeat. More like she was holding herself back from lashing out. You could have just told me, she muttered. I have, many times. You just didn't hear it until it cost you something you care about. The room was still for a long moment. Even Mia, sitting in the living room watching cartoons, seemed to sense the air had changed. Finally, she said, "So what now? You gonna keep it maxed out?" You smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowing. No. I'll release it when I feel like you've learned something. Until then, you can work around it. You're resourceful. I taught you that. Her eyes flickered confusion, maybe shame, maybe the faintest spark of respect, and you could see the thought cross her mind. She's not who I thought she was. And that was the point. You cleared the dishes, letting the clink of porcelain punctuate the conversation's end. She didn't stay much longer. When she left, she hugged you stiff at first, then tighter than you expected. But you know better than to mistake an embrace for transformation. Change isn't born from a single blow. It grows in the quiet days after and the choices people make when they think no one is watching. And you were watching now, always had been. You noticed it first in the small ways, a softening in her voice when she needed something, a sudden brightness on your doorstep when the weekend rolled in. But the real test came the following Friday when she texted, "Traffic is wild. Dropping Mia in 10, you're a lifesaver." No question mark, no space for no. It's a move you recognize now, the gliding entitlement of the golden daughter who assumes the world orbits her errands. And you, quiet mother, had always been her moon. You met her at the door with your sweater buttoned and your bag on your shoulder, not ready for bed, ready to leave. "I have plans," you said. The word landed like chalk snapping. She blinked. "Since when do you have plans on Fridays?" "Since now." There it was again in her face, the barely concealed shock that you would occupy your own life. She tried to smile. "I'll only be a couple hours." "That's not what this is about," you replied, stepping aside so Mia could tug off her shoes. "It's about the calendar. You don't get to write your needs across mine in permanent ink." You watched her fumble for another angle. "They always do when the old doors close. You're being dramatic, Mom. It's just babysitting." You let the word hang between you like smoke. Babysitting, as if your bond with your granddaughter could be filed under tasks and tips. "I love Mia," you said, kneeling to zip the child's jacket. "But love isn't a coupon." That night, you did something she never expected. You went out. Nothing loud. Just coffee with a friend, slow conversation, laughter that didn't scrape. You kept your phone on. It stayed silent. And you felt the oddness of it, the empty space where panic used to be the uncoiling of a spine too long bent. You realized you were never waiting for her to change. You'd been waiting for yourself. The next morning, the ripple hit. Your sister called to tell you your daughter had posted a story online, some vague little quotation about toxic parents who try to control their children through money. You could have burned in that public insinuation. Instead, you brewed tea. You know projection when you see it. The shadow wife, the part of her that resents you for being needed, was out in daylight, spinning her little webs for strangers to nod along. You did not take the bait. Here's a question for you. When someone throws a story over you like a net, do you twist and thrash or do you cut in silence? You chose scissors. On Sunday, you drafted a message, not cruel, precise. Going forward, I'm happy to have Mia when we agree at least 48 hours in advance. Pickup time must be exact. If you're late, I charge a fee. And if I'm with Mia overnight, I will be the one to decide what I do with any joint financial tools that currently exist. Not as punishment, as parody. You reread it twice, pruning every apology that tried to sneak in. Then you hit send. Her response came minutes later. A fee. Are you serious? You're my mother, the exclamation clawed at the screen. You breathed. Then you typed exactly what you would have told a stranger. Boundaries are the rent we pay for peace. You could almost hear the gears grinding. She didn't reply. But the silence wasn't empty. It had weight like a room closing in on a lie. The following week, life resumed its ordinary rhythms. You picked up groceries, watered plants, sat with a book that didn't try too hard to impress you. And then the school called Mia had a fever. Could someone come? Your daughter, it turned out, was in a meeting unreachable for the next 2 hours. You went. Of course you did. That's the part no one understands about boundaries. They don't cancel love. They clarify it. You found Mia flushed and drowsy, that soft, trusting weight of a child leaning into the one who shows up. You swept her hair back and whispered nonsense syllables, the little spells only grandmothers know. On the drive home, you felt the old ache rise, the one that says, "See, you're needed." You could fold. You could let your daughter rewrite the terms again because the need is real and the child is innocent. But you didn't. You called your daughter from the kitchen and said, "I have Mia. She's okay. She needs rest. You'll pick her up at 6. At 6:17, she pulled into your driveway, harried and perfumed, guilt blooming fresh. "Traffic," she said, and then as if the word were a disinfectant thank you. You kept your voice level. "You're late. That's $200. She gaped. "$200 what?" "Dollars." "Mom." You didn't blink. "You are late. Time is not a piggy bank you smash to buy convenience. You do not get to cash in my hours at the register of your emergencies." She swallowed defiance, pulsing and then retreating. "Fine," she muttered, though the word tasted of metal. She opened her wallet, remembered the card, remembered she might not have it like she used to. You watched the arithmetic happen in her eyes. She handed you cash. Her fingers trembled. "Is this where you worry you've gone too far, that the world will call you cold? Look closer." Your hands didn't shake, not because you're ruthless, but because you've finally become exact. That night, your phone lit up with a message that was not for your eyes accidentally sent to you anyway. Your daughter venting to a friend. She's acting brand new like she's a boss. She thinks she's teaching me a lesson. Then, what if I just don't talk to her for a while? She'll cave. You smiled not from pettiness, but from recognition. She still believed your love was a faucet she could turn to thirst you. It had worked before, but you were not built of droughts anymore. You didn't react. Days passed. She reached out with practical questions, small olive branches disguised as logistics. You answered plainly. No sugar, no salt, just yes or no. And then the break in the pattern. She called at dawn on Thursday, voice low small. "Mom, are you awake?" "I am." A pause, the sound of someone looking at a cliff and trying to name the drop. "I messed up," she said finally. "At work. I thought I could juggle everything. I can't. I need help." There it was not manipulation, but surrender's trembling cousin. You stood very still inside yourself, the quiet mother, the one who knows that rescuing too quickly turns into chains. What kind of help, you asked, as if you were speaking to a stranger worth respecting. "I need a plan," she whispered, "and I need you to not hate me." You closed your eyes. The ache was there, faithful and human, but behind it, strength breathing slow. "I don't hate you," you said. "I'm just done pretending. Come by tonight. We'll draft the plan. But know this, it will include consequences you won't like." You could feel her nod through the line. Relief threaded with fear. Good. Fear of the right things sharpens a person. Not fear of love leaving, but fear of losing your own reflection. After the call, you made breakfast. Cracked eggs folded the morning into your body like a hymn. You were not the same woman who'd waited past midnight for a door to open. You were a gate now, and gates do not apologize for closing at dusk. She came that evening without the perfume, without the high heels, without the shield of a well-curated face. There was something almost teenage in her posture, shoulders folded and eyes darting as if bracing for a lecture. You didn't give her one. You simply gestured to the kitchen table where 2 mugs of tea steamed between a legal pad and a pen. "Sit," you said, "not sharp, not warm, just an instruction." She sat, fingers wrapped around the mug like she needed the heat. You let the quiet stretch until it began to hum. That's when she broke it. "I know I've been hard to deal with," she said, not quite meeting your eyes. I don't know how it got this bad. With you. With everything." You did know. You'd watched it happen, the slow inflation of her self-importance, the belief that your life bent to her schedule, her wants, her chaos. But knowing wasn't the same as hearing her admit it, and that admission, even ragged, was its own kind of currency. "This isn't just about me," you said, drawing the pen across the pad. "It's about how you treat people you depend on. You say you need help. Fine. Here's the truth. Help without respect is exploitation." She flinched at the word but didn't argue. "So what? You want me to pay you for watching Mia?" "This isn't a transaction," you said, meeting her eyes at last. "It's a commitment to change. That's what this paper is for." You started writing in slow, deliberate strokes. 1. All childcare requests must be made at least 48 hours in advance, except genuine emergencies. 2. Agreed upon pickup times are binding. Lateness without communication results in a set monetary penalty. 3. Joint financial accounts remain under your shared control, but any misuse of trust will trigger immediate restrictions. 4. Respect is not optional. You push the pad toward her. "Sign it if you agree. If you don't, we stop here." She stared at it, jaw working like she was chewing on a rock. "This is a contract." "It's boundaries on paper," you said, "because spoken ones vanish when convenient." There was a beat where you thought she'd walk, but then she picked up the pen and signed, not from grace, from necessity. You could see it in the angle of her hand, the way the pen dug too hard into the paper. But even necessity can be the seed of change. When it was done, you folded the page and tucked it into your recipe box. Not hidden, but not on display. A living agreement. "Now," you said, standing, "tell me about work." Her eyes softened with surprise. Maybe she expected you to end it there, to let the rules sit cold between you. But you weren't building a wall. You were building a structure, something she could lean against without mistaking it for a couch. She talked, halting at first, then spilling in bursts. Missed deadlines. A boss who'd stopped trusting her. Money stretched thin. You listened, sifting for the places where her habits, the same ones that had worn you down, had frayed her own life. "You overpromise," you said finally. "Then you scramble. You think if you spin fast enough, the plates won't fall. But they're falling, aren't they?" She nodded, eyes glassy. I can't let people down." You almost laughed, the bitter kind, but held it in. "You don't mind letting me down." "That's different," she said quickly, then winced at her own words. "No, that's the same, and until you see that, you'll keep running the same pattern with everyone." There was no argument left in her, just a long sigh of deflation. And for the first time in months, maybe years, you saw not the golden daughter, not the manipulator, but the girl you raised, the one who used to curl against you on the couch, tracing patterns on your arm, trusting you were her anchor. You didn't say you forgave her. Forgiveness is a seed planted in private. What you did say was, "We'll start small. 1 month with these rules. You keep them, we revisit. You break them, we adjust." She nodded, and this time the movement felt real. When she left, she hugged you again, longer, warmer. And you hugged back, but lightly, like holding something delicate that you weren't sure was finished forming. Later, as you washed the mugs, you thought about the shift. Power wasn't about control. It was about clarity, knowing exactly where you stood and making sure others knew too. And you realized something else. You weren't just teaching her. You were teaching yourself that you didn't have to trade pieces of your dignity for scraps of love. It was a quiet victory, but it was yours. Weeks passed, and the paper in your recipe box gathered the faintest curl at the corners. It stayed there like a silent witness, its presence enough to keep the old chaos at bay. She followed the rules, not perfectly, but enough for you to notice. Texts came with actual lead time now. Pickup times were kept or at least renegotiated before they were broken. There was even the occasional thank you that didn't feel like a reflex. But change is rarely pure. It comes tangled with resistance, with old reflexes clawing to survive. One Thursday evening, the phone rang at 8:15 p.m. You knew before you answered that it wasn't going to be simple. "Mom," she began, that tone she used to reserve for bad report cards. "I know it's late notice, but I need you to take Mia tomorrow night. My sitter canceled. It's just for one night, and I'll bring her over after work." You let the pause stretch until it became something she had to fill. "I'll pay you extra," she added quickly. "I know it's not 48 hours, but nothing you said, and your voice didn't waver. I have plans." A beat of silence. "You can't change them." "No, and I don't want to." It wasn't cruelty, it was truth. You felt the faint ache of guilt because you could have shifted things, but guilt is a muscle you've stopped flexing on command. You thought of all the times she'd moved you around like a piece of furniture, and you remembered how small that had made you feel. You weren't going back. Her sigh came sharp through the line. "Okay, I'll figure it out." And here's the thing she did. She found someone else. The world didn't collapse. Her life didn't unravel. She adjusted just like you'd always known she could if she stopped assuming you were her safety net at all hours. The following week, she arrived early for a planned drop-off. That alone was startling, but what caught you off guard was the envelope she placed on the counter before leaving. For last time, she said already halfway to the door. You opened it after she left not cash but a handwritten note, short, uneven script like she'd rewritten it too many times. I know I've been hard on you. I think I learned that people would forgive me no matter what if they loved me. I didn't realize how much I was taking until you made me stop. I'm trying. There was no grand apology, no cinematic tears, just that word, trying, and for once you believed her. Still, you didn't gush. You didn't text back a glowing reassurance, because this wasn't a fairy tale where one act redeems the story. This was real life, and real change needs room to breathe. 2 weekends later, you and Mia spent the day baking cookies. She perched on a stool, hair escaping its braid face streaked with flour. At one point, she said very casually, "Mommy says you're teaching her grown-up rules." You almost laughed. Is that what she called them? Uh-huh. Mia nodded, pressing a star-shaped cutter into the dough. She said you're making her be better. Out of the mouths of children, the truth comes unpolished. You looked at her small, serious face and thought maybe this was bigger than you and your daughter. Maybe this was a thread being rewoven for the next generation. The idea made you stand a little straighter. Later, when your daughter came to pick her up, she lingered in the doorway. "Mia told me you guys baked," she said. "She wants to bring some to my office tomorrow." "Chic," and you replied, handing her a tin. "Just remember, I'm not a last-minute bakery either." A flicker of a smile crossed her face. "I know." And this time it didn't sound like lip service. As they drove away, you realized you weren't waiting for a perfect ending anymore. You were living in the middle of the change, the uncomfortable, uneven part where progress coexists with old instincts. And strangely, that felt better than any apology could. Because you'd learned the secret when you stopped trading your worth for harmony. You don't just change the way others treat you, you change the way you see yourself. And she could feel it too. That was why she'd started coming early, why she signed the paper, why she was writing awkward notes instead of sliding past the topic. She had seen that you were no longer someone she could shift like a chess piece. You knew there would still be slip-ups. She might still test you. People don't shed patterns overnight. But the difference now was that you had a spine made of boundary lines. You had a way to hold the ground you'd built. And maybe the most radical thing you'd done wasn't the credit card stunt or the fee or the contract. Maybe it was the moment you realized you didn't have to be liked to be respected. That night, as you put away the last of the dishes, you thought of something you might tell her someday when the time was right. The woman who knows her worth doesn't beg, she watches. Then she rises.